Welcome to This Week in Fascism, where our goal here is to keep you up to date on all of the latest fascistic maneuverings of the incoming administration. Is this the most fun assignment I have? No, no, it is not. Is it necessary? Yeah, absolutely. Because in order to stay ahead of the curve, we have to know what those who are determined to dismantle our democracy are doing. So let's dive in. In the time leading up to the election, Donald obviously lashed out to the media at every opportunity. He's been doing this for years. We know how he feels about the media, calling them fraudsters, saying they're fake news, and the enemy of the people, which is probably the most dangerous thing about the media, he said. But there is one thing that he said recently that should send chills down our spines.
Welcome back to America Decides. In the days leading up to the election, Donald Trump filed an FEC complaint against the Washington Post, reportedly sent a letter to the New York Times threatening legal action, and filed a lawsuit against ABC News earlier this year and against us, CBS News, last month. Now, after winning the election, President-elect Trump told Fox News he will be, quote, open and available to the press, unquote, unless he is, and this is another quote, not treated fairly.
All right, we're going to get to that last part, unless he's not treated fairly, in a little bit, but keep that in mind, because that is a not very veiled threat of an authoritarian who now has access to the levers of power to punish his perceived enemies. Legislation against the press, speaking of media, is on the rise. And we're also seeing, as a result of the election, a lot of anticipatory obedience from people in the media who should have the power to resist and should certainly know better. This has come into particular focus with Donald's latest attempt to block the so-called Press Act. Donald is already demanding that Republicans in Congress kill this bipartisan legislation that would protect American journalists from surveillance by the federal government and help shield confidential sources or whistleblowers who speak to journalists from on condition that they will be protected from retaliation by law enforcement. Donald actually posted this on True Social, quote, Republicans must kill this bill. This in particular has global organizations in support of freedom of the press sounding the alarm.
The day after the presidential election, the nonprofit Committee to Protect Journalists issued a statement warning of a potentially hostile climate for press freedom under a second Trump term. It read in part, legal persecution, imprisonment, physical violence, and even killings have sadly become familiar threats for journalists across the world. They must not now also become commonplace in the United States, where threats of violence and online harassment have in recent years become routine. That's as advocates are urging Senate lawmakers to pass a bipartisan bill that would protect journalists from government spying and other interference.
These kinds of threats, as I said, have resulted in an increase in anticipatory obedience. We saw this as the hosts of MSNBC's Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, went to Mar-a-Lago last week to bend the knee to Donald Trump. We also know that from at least two sources that part of their decision to visit, which they characterized on air as an attempt to open lines of communication with the new administration, had much more to do with their fear of reprisals from said incoming administration. I personally believe that Joe and Mika have always been hacks. They've never been journalists, but there's another pretty shocking act of capitulation that came from the Young Turks' Cenk Uygur. On Twitter, he had this to say, quote, I asked Elon Musk to put me in charge of cutting the Pentagon. And he said, what are your suggestions? I run the largest left-wing network online, and a Democratic leader has never asked me that question. The idea that they would take advice from a populist is disdainful to them. What what business do you have telling anybody what to do about making cuts at the Pentagon? The fact that Elon Musk thinks that your opinion in this matter is worth anything just shows you what a hack Elon Musk is. So the idea that a so-called person, a populist on the left, is making common cause with fascism and is comparing them favorably to democratic politicians and institutions is fairly alarming. I mean, right now, yours Twitter feed reads like a right-wing mouthpiece. And his is one of the largest free media networks already obeying in advance. As much as Donald has been urging his lackeys to block protective legislation of the press, he's been urging them to push through harmful legislation. Particularly frightening is H.R. 9495, known as the Nonprofit Killer Bill. Masked as a bill to deny public funding of terrorist organizations, which seems like a reasonable thing for all of us to want, Donald's plans for the bill are much more fascistic in their implications. The Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act that would give Donald broad powers to target his political foes has passed major hurdle toward becoming law. The bill, again known as H.R. 9495, would empower the Treasury Secretary unilaterally to designate any nonprofit as a, quote, terrorist supporting organization, unquote, and revoke its tax exempt status, effectively killing the group. Critics say the proposal would give presidential administrations a tool to crack down on organizations for political ends, like, for example, the American Civil Liberties Union. And if you don't think that Donald is capable of that, I assure you he is. Similar to Donald's agenda to use legislation against the American people, Republicans in the House have pushed through a Dismantle DEI Act. Texas Congressman Michael Cloud's bill passed out of the House Oversight Committee on a party line vote this week. This legislation would eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, known as DEI, within the federal government. This is Cloud's statement. DEI programs masquerade as fairness while instead fostering division, inefficiency, and discrimination in our institutions. They waste taxpayer dollars and undermine the merited-based principles that have made America strong. All of that, every single word of that is false. And this is why the fact that we lost the House, one of the many reasons that we lost the House is so troubling. And even though it is a good thing that the Republicans' margin is very small, the House is a democratic institution and majority rules. So as long as every single Republican supports this kind of bigoted nonsense, we're in trouble. Luckily, however, when fascism rears its ugly head, which it is going to do increasingly, we always have champions to defend us, the rule of law, and our democracy. As long as we have ourselves and we keep ourselves and each other informed, as long as we have a community, and as long as we have fighters in Congress like Stacey Plaskett, Jamie Raskin, and Jasmine Crockett, we are going to be okay eventually. Jasmine Crockett's opposition to this bill is a case in point.
It's because you can then misuse words like oppression. There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression. We didn't ask to be here. We're not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to sit here and be offended when you want to sit here and act like, and don't let it escape you that it is white men on this side of the aisle telling us, people of color on this side of the aisle, that y'all are the ones being oppressed, that y'all are the ones that are.
One of their tactics is indeed to turn everything on its head and make the white man the victim, which, as Congresswoman Crockett points out, is not just absurd, it is obscene. So Thank you, Congresswoman Crockett, for continuing to do the work. My only suggestion going forward is please speak directly into the microphone. Other than that, you absolutely rock. And thanks to her and other elected Democrats like her who have the courage to stand up in these very difficult times, the rest of us will know what's going on. Eyes wide open, everybody.
Hey, everybody. In case you weren't aware, I am spectacularly bad at self-promotion. So here goes. Please subscribe to our channel and like and share our videos. Your support means so much to all of us. Thank you.